This is the Shure 515 SA, an almost 60-year-old microphone that was entry-level back then, and even then was considered cheap, but good. Now, it was marketed towards small groups, instrumentalists, vocalists in theaters, nightclubs, schools, and churches. So for some reason, podcasters and YouTubers were not on the list. I wonder why. Still though, with all of that said, do you think it can beat a Behringer? Now, I got my hands on this yesterday, cost me about $80, and so far with my research into the microphone, it looks like it was a pretty fair deal. That was $80 Canadian, by the way. I do have to say, I love the look. So in case you're wondering, no, this is not the precursor to the SM57, despite how it looks. Now that said, this design does end up living on with the SM57, but it is an entirely different lineup of microphones, which, by the way, is kind of fascinating. And the reason it's fascinating is there's very little online on this lineup of microphones, even though there's evidence to prove that these things were well saturated into the market. Though I did find out some interesting things about it. Most of the information about this mic online is strictly guesses on message boards by people too lazy to place a phone call. Now, if you're ever in my position and you want to know about a certain microphone, just call the company. Most companies are more than happy to send you to their tech department where someone can fill you in on what you have. I did just that, and it was just that simple. Actually, big shout out to Shure for hooking me up with all the information on this bad boy. Now, this line, the 515 SA, started production in 1968, a full 9 years after the development of the SM57. So you can see, they weren't exactly one before the other. Now, at the time, the mothership of capsules that Shure was using was called the Unidyne 3. In fact, the 545 SD was called just that. It was the Unidyne 545 SD. And yes, it did look a lot like this one, but with just a bit more polish. And yes, it was also an XLR, which is another telling feature of this microphone. You see, these high impedance mics were all around cheaper to manufacture back then, as they didn't have as many parts to them. And honestly, no one outside of pros were using XLRs anyways. So these were kind of like the consumer version of the pro version. And also one that could be used in a corporate setting as a mic for loudspeakers or comm systems in buildings. So while it was still cheaper, it wasn't that much of a slouch. You remember, back in the 60s, they were still making things that were expected to last. And they did just that. This thing is a tank. But they couldn't have a cheaper mic out in the world with that same Unidyne capsule. Oh no, this thing needed to be just a bit less than the more expensive one. Which brings us nicely into build quality. The construction of this mic is solid. It weighs in at just over a pound, which is on par with most microphones these days. The front grille does have just a bit of give, and it seems to be more in place for breath reduction than anything else. The cord coming out the other side seems a bit slim, though, I mean, the microphone's lasted this long, I can't imagine it's much of an issue. And the 1/4-inch jack is, it's just a beauty. I wish more connectors were built to this spec. As for what's on the inside, this mic has the Unidyne B capsule. This is the little brother to the Unidyne 3. Kind of like the different capsule they used in the SM48 compared to the SM58. It's not horrible, it's just not a Unidyne. And that's really important to make that distinction. Much like the Shure mics these days, this one also has an internal shock mount. Though, I'm going to put this on being the 60s and all. It's called the internal rubber vibration isolator. That sounds dirty. I think I'm going to refer to all the shock mounts as rubber vibration isolators. With all that said, do you want to see how it performs? Okay then, let's check out the specs. Okay, well here's the online spec sheet, and there's not a whole lot there. Now, it does say it's a dynamic microphone with a cardioid pickup pattern. It has a frequency response of 80 Hz to 13 kilohertz, which is interesting. I don't think I've ever seen that before. Cancellation at the sides should be 6 dB, and at the back 15 to 20 dB. And the microphone output should be negative 59 dB. I'm guessing that is self noise. But while we're here looking at the specs, this is kind of cool. Look at some of the optional accessories. You have a line matching transformer, a windscreen. That's kind of cool because this thing is a bit poppy. They've got a dual mount, a vibration isolation stand, which I'm wondering if that's a shock mount. I'm not exactly sure. And you can also get a quick disconnect adapter, which I would love to see that on mics these days. Like those kinds of accessories would be really cool. I kind of wish I could get my hands on that. So if anyone has a lead on any of this, hook me up. And yes, I'm looking at you, Shure. This is the off-axis rejection test. Here's me talking directly into the front of the mic from about 6 inches away. Here, I'm talking into the front of the microphone, or I'm talking towards the side of the capsule, from about 6 inches away. Now I'm talking into the rear of the microphone from about 6 inches away. As I go around the microphone, you can actually hear how it differentiates my voice. Now for the plosive test of the Shure 515 SA. Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers. Sorry about that. Now for a handling noise test of the Shure 515 SA. Now to test the proximity effect on the Shure 515 SA. This is me talking directly into the capsule from about 1 inch away. This is me talking into the capsule from about 6 inches away. This is me 1 inch away from the capsule. Here we have the Shure 515 SA versus the Shure SM48. Now, I know you thought I was going to do the Behringer first, but no, we're going to actually go between these first. So you have to wait till the end. This is the difference between the Shure 515 SA and the Shure SM48. This one is a very recent microphone. This one was discontinued in 1983. So this is how they sound. What do you think? To me, this one is the ultimate test. Behringer aside, does the Shure 515 SA sound better than the Shure SM58? My gut is telling me no. Unidyne 3 capsule, not Unidyne 3 capsule. This is kind of like when we compared the SM48 to the SM58. They are going to be very unique on their own. This one is going to have a unique sound compared to this, just based on the capsule, the age. There might be more character to this microphone than this one. So what do you think? Are we going 515 SA or are we going SM58? I know, it's not that fair. Now we have Shure 515 SA versus the AKG D5. Now this one is a super cardioid. This one is just a cardioid. And if you missed my review on the D5, you might want to check it out actually. It's up on the YouTube channel. Actually, I'll link it up here for you, okay? Cool. This is how they sound compared to one another. I think we're getting into unfair territory here, but of course, I don't have my headphones on. This could all be going sideways on me, and this thing just sounds like crap. Let me know down below, which one did you like over these? On to the next microphone, which is going to be super unfair. Now, we have the Shure 515 SA versus the Sennheiser E835. I really love the sound of the Sennheiser E835. Very little EQing for me on this microphone. Like it's just almost a plug and go. A little bit of EQ, a little bit of refinement, but for the most part, it sounds phenomenal. And I remind you, none of this audio is being worked. There's no EQ on this audio. This is straight out of the microphone and into my interface. So which one do you like? The Shure what is it again? 515 SA or the Sennheiser E835. 515 SA E835. Let me know down below. And now for the one that y'all have been waiting for, especially you Behringer fanboys out there. This is the Shure 515 SA versus the Behringer XM8500. This is the SM58 for the Behringer line. Which one do you like? The 60-year-old microphone or the relatively new in comparison microphone of the Behringer XM8500? I really didn't know what to expect when I bought this microphone. I mean, it smells like my grandfather's house. If my grandfather smoked 2 packs a day directly beside this mic. I'm not even kidding you. It's disgusting. I had to remove the little bit of protection that was inside the capsule because it was just dust. And I still kind of feel gross after cleaning it. Like, I hope there wasn't anything in there that could get me sick. As for the tests, I did okay when we were putting it through all the paces. I actually didn't mind it much on the acoustic, and I'm kind of looking forward to see what Dylan can do with it. But the big question here was, did it actually beat the Behringer XM8500? Here I thought I was being cheeky by keeping the XM8500 until the end. And while I do love this microphone, I love the character from it, no, it didn't beat any of the mics. You see, when listening to it alone, it does sound fine, though it's a bit bright and slightly distorting in the highs. But as soon as it went up against the SM48, it was clear as day how far we have come in microphone technology, especially on the microphones that we consider cheap. Now, this was an entry-level microphone back in its day, and if there were podcasters or basement studios back then, this would have been your option. This would have been the microphone you would have been using. And when you consider that was 60 years ago, as crazy as that is, this would have been a great option. And now, at a fraction of the cost, you can blow this mic out of the water with something that is considered very much entry level. There's so much more clarity from the newer mics, and even with the Behringer, which, by the way, I wasn't really rooting for whatsoever, just so you know. I found the Shure 515 SA it was just lacking. All of that said, though, I think this one's going to be a display piece more than a, mic I use all the time. If anything, mostly because I can't stand the smell of it. I mean, it actually gave me a headache. I kind of have a headache right now. It's super gross. The one thing I did note from this, though, this was an entry-level mic of its time. Yet from a build perspective, it does seem to outclass the entry-level stuff from Todayland. This thing was actually built to last, and, well, it has. Thanks for watching. If you liked this video and my comparisons didn't piss you off too much, annihilate that like button, kind of like you would a taco from Taco Bell. Oh, I could go for some Taco Bell right now. Also, try that other button. It saves kittens, so I've heard. Cheers, and I'll see you in the next video.